Hello, everyone, and welcome to the real estate market analysis for Morgan Hill, California for the month of March in 2023. This is an opportunity for us to sort of look back over the shoulder, see where we've been, see where our numbers are this month, and see if we can't come up with some theories on where we might be going based on past performance. My name is Robert Whitelaw. I'm a licensed real estate broker right here in California, serving all of the southern Silicon Valley area, including San Jose, Morgan Hill, Gilroy, and all other areas in Silicon Valley. So feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to discuss your goals in real estate. You can find me at soldbyrobert.com. All right, let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at total active listings for Morgan Hill. Active listings really just breaks down to what was the inventory. So for you buyers out there, it's how many homes did you have to choose from? And for you sellers out there, it is how much competition did you have to try to get attention just on your home versus all the homes that are in the market. Now you can see that we've got a 69% increase from the same time last year. So in March of 2022, we had 35 homes actively listed for sale in Morgan Hill. This year, for March of 2023, we had 54 homes. And of course, the way this is set up is I'm trying to simplify the graph so that at one time you're able to see both the month-to-month historical lead up to March of 2023, but then also side by side compare March of last year to March of this year. That's what the red column on the far right is, just to show you what last year's number was, just so they're right next to each other and you can visually see what that difference was. So 69% increase. The months of inventory in Morgan Hill is currently 1.6. And what that means is if we froze the numbers right now, if we froze the total inventory number with the total number of homes that sold in the month, and that those numbers continued to apply without increasing or decreasing, we would have 1.6 months of inventory on hand. That is an extremely low number. It is a number that would normally be associated with an extreme seller's market, but we're not in a seller's market right now. We're in a buyer's market. And the reason why I'm spending more time making sure folks see that number is because if we see any increase in the number of buyers, and I just did a podcast this week on the FHFA's plans to subsidize and underwrite more subprime lending, if that does have the effect of increasing the number of buyers in the market, that is exactly the kind of thing that could feed a marketplace, provide more buyers, and potentially kick us into a situation where we are suddenly in a oddly seller's market real quickly, just because we have such low inventory right now. If we try to figure out where things are going to be going, we can see that between February and March of last year, we had an increase in inventory. We saw the same thing this year. So if we try to figure out what we're going to see in April, we can see that between March and April of last year, there was actually a substantial increase in inventory. From 35 to 60 homes on the market. That's very normal. That's a seasonal thing. This is the time of year when homes that are trying to get listed and sold for the selling season are starting to get listed. So we normally see that kind of an increase in inventory. My guess is we will see an increase in inventory between March and April, but not to the degree we did last year. So in terms of month-to-month trends, the same, just not as big of a jump in April as we saw in 2022. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at new listings. Now, these are homeowners who decided to take a stab at getting their home sold, meaning their home was listed for sale in the month of March of 2023. Now, this year, that month for March of 2023, that number was 54. So 54 homes were listed. Last year, that number was 86 homes in March of 2022. That's a 37% drop. From the month-to-month standpoint, it's been a steady increase since December, and again, that is normal. That's the seasonal thing that we tend to see every year in just about every market, where from December on up, we tend to see more homes being listed as we enter into the new year and start closing in on that selling season of summertime. Last year, between February and March, we saw a pretty substantial jump. Not as substantial a jump this year, but still a jump. And then between March and April of last year, we saw a jump, but a small jump, right? From 86 homes to 93 homes. My guess would be that between March and April of this year in 2023, we will see an increase between March and April, but it'll be very flat, very small. I don't suspect we're going to see a huge increase. I don't see any market elements in play right now that would indicate we're going to see some big jump in the number of sellers that are listing their properties in the month of April. So we'll see how that unfolds. But in terms of market influences, trends month to month, everything is falling in line with what we would normally expect. It's just the scale that we're seeing being different, given we're under very different lending scenarios right now with high interest rates. Next, let's go take a look at the number of homes that sold. This is just the homes that closed in this month of March. So these didn't really sell. I mean, they closed escrow and officially sold in this month, but the offers on these properties were made last month, unless they had a super short closing time, right? So 30 to 45 days is the typical escrow. So this represents offers that were accepted probably 30 to 45 days ago that actually closed escrow in March. Now, this number is down 39% from the same time last year. This year, we saw 37 homes sell in Morgan Hill, down from 61 homes last year in March of 2022. If we want to try to figure out the trend here, from February to March of last year, we saw an increase in the total number of homes sold. Same thing this year. Between March and April of last year, we saw an increase. My expectation would be the same. Activity starts to pick up right around March, April timeframe. And we see that market sort of peak in April, May, June, and then start to take a drop once we get out of June and wrap up that hot selling season. My feeling is, given what we're seeing in the marketplace and given what the realities are on the ground, we'll see these same month-to-month trends, but in a much lower scale, just as we discussed with new home listings, for instance. All right, next, let's go. Okay, so now we get into pending homes. Pending homes simply tells us how many homes or how many sellers accepted an offer in this month. And it's a way to anticipate what we might see next month in terms of closed sales or homes that sold. This year, we had 30 homes that went pending in March. Last year, we had 79 homes in the same month of March of 2022 that accepted an offer. So that's down 62% from the same time last year. And that's a big drop. I mean, the number of pending offers just dropped through the floor. What's also interesting is this is another way for us to get a little bit of insight into potentially how many homes we're seeing fail to close escrow, right? This means that an offer was accepted, escrow was opened, and the rest of the process of getting the home sold happened. So signing off on contingencies, getting all the final approvals on the loans, the underwriting, all of those kinds of things. So if any of those failed, those result in these not ending up being closed deals in the following month or the month after that, depending on how long escrow was. Now, this year, we saw a drop from February of 2023 to March of 2023 in terms of pending homes, which is interesting. Last year, we saw an increase between February and March, and I think that is a very informative trend to take into next month with the supremely noticeable downturn in March of pending sales. That estimation we made in what number of homes are going to sell next month gets very much foreshortened to the point where, given this number, we may actually see fewer homes close in April, which would be a big shocker. I mean, if you look at the trend last year, March of 2022 was the peak in terms of homes that went pending. We'll see if we get a slightly elongated sales period where perhaps instead of seeing a huge peak in March with the rest of the months just paling by comparison, which kind of makes sense because keep in mind what happened in March of 2022. That's when interest rates rose so much. What we may see is just a more level period of March, April, May being much more closely related to each other and staying relatively flat for a longer period of time. But I think that March 2022 number is a little bit of an outlier. My feelings are that buyers who were in the process of buying needed to get that escrow closed. They needed to make that offer so that they had their locked in rates and needed to make things happen in March so that they got the rate that they were hoping for. So I think that's one reason why we can explain that particular jump. So in terms of expectations, if we look at between March and April of last year, there was a decline. Given the weirdness of March last year, my guess is we will see a relatively flat performance between March and April of this year. And then obviously a much more subdued performance in terms of homes that actually close escrow in Morgan Hill. Next, Let's take a look at average original list price. Now, original list price is the very first price that was selected to market the home at, meaning when it was entered into the MLS, this is the very first number that was used. And we can see that it's up from the same time last year. $1,650,000 is the average aspired price that sellers would like to get for their home that real estate agents listed it for. And last year, that number was $1,514,000. We can see that this number varies a little bit, and that's because of the sample size, right? Morgan Hill has dozens of homes that get listed, not hundreds or thousands. So you're going to see variation, right? We have a very diverse real estate market here in Morgan Hill. We have homes that are definitely at the entry level, and then we have homes that are basically estates, right? That are multi-million-dollar homes. So one listing that's of that higher priced variety can absolutely skew this data. So what do we need to do with this number? I think in our heads, we try to equalize it a little bit, try to average it out. I think over time, we can see that things have trended downward over the last few months, but not by a lot. But one thing that is consistently true is year over year, sellers expect more for their homes in Morgan Hill, and to a great degree, more than other communities, more than Gilroy, more than San Jose. So there's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, between what things are being listed at in Morgan Hill and what they ultimately sell for. What do I expect to happen in the coming months? My guess, I mean, if we look between February and March of last year, we can see that there was an increase in average list price. In April, there was a decline. I am not willing to make an estimation based on this because I believe all of those numbers leading up to May and June, when things sort of peaked, are a little bit outliers. I would expect numbers to be about flat for the coming months in terms of what folks are asking for, in terms of what list prices are. But let's take a look next at what the sales prices are, because I think this is really the more important number. Now, remember, we're down 13.2% from the same time last year, but we were up 9% in terms of expectations. So there's a huge disconnect between what sellers expect and what sellers are getting on average in the Morgan Hill market. Now, another thing to keep in mind that's interesting is we're at $1,264,000 in March of 2023, which is down from $1,457,000 last year. But the median for this month is $1,203,000. So the median and the average are very close to each other, meaning the median is the point at which half of the homes in this array of numbers were above that amount and half were below. So this average number is actually a fairly reliable representation of the true average, given the distribution of where these homes fell in terms of price above and below the median, but also what the actual average was for the average home sold in Morgan Hill. The trend here is a little easier to spot. You can see we sort of peaked up until March, April. April, we started to see, in April, we saw the peak in terms of also coexisting with, say, July and October. The October one is really based on one higher priced home that ended up selling. So that number should be normalized down to about 1.5, 1.4 million. But we saw that general trend of increasing until about July, and then a general trend of decreasing right up until March of 2023. All of this being fed by higher interest rates that really suppressed buyer turnout and really had buyers looking for lower priced homes to buy, or more aggressively making offers at lower price points because they didn't have to worry about multiple offers in those cases. We're going to take a look at a second at a number that will inform us as to how we're doing on multiple offers and that sort of thing. But it wouldn't surprise me if in the coming months, and I'm not even really going to look back at what happened between March and April, because I consider that an outlier because of the interest rate changes that happened then. My guess would be that we see perhaps a bit of an increase month to month, but no question in my mind will we see far less on the average sales price versus April of last year by a considerable amount, just because of the crazy numbers we got last year. Next, percent of list price. This is the one we were just talking about because we're at an interesting point. Now, we've been below 100% since June of 2022, sort of bouncing around. We'd had a few months when we were far below. This is one of the first months where we're just above, meaning that in some number of cases, folks were getting over their asking price by 0.3%. Last year, it was 111.8, which basically meant homes were on average selling for 11.8% over asking price, which really just tells you how competitive the market was then. Buyers making multiple offers on properties, sellers having multiple offers to choose from. That's far less prevalent now. But this is something that also demonstrates the resilient part, I guess, of the Morgan Hill market. There are absolutely some areas in Morgan Hill that are still super desirable. And when a home gets listed there, it not only sells relatively quickly, it sells for over asking price. And this is definitely a representation of that. We see the same sort of thing happening in places like San Jose, where there are some just super desirable areas where you're going to continue to see resilient performance because they're super desirable. They're places where buyers really want to live, and they're willing to offer over asking price to get in there. Overall, the delta from last year to this year is a loss of 11.5 percentage points in terms of percent of list price that were offered. Now, just like we were sort of looking into the mindset of sellers back when we looked at original list price, this is an opportunity to get a glimpse into what buyers are thinking. These are the offers that buyers made when faced with what the list price was at the time the offer was made. So this isn't compared to original list price. This is compared to what the buyer was faced with. They saw the home on the sheet. It said, this is how much the home is worth. And they were on average willing to make an offer just about at asking price. Now, again, if you're out there shopping, if you're a buyer, this does not mean you need to offer 100% of what the asking price is to successfully get yourself into that home. You need to be working with someone who knows that agent well or knows that area well and can give you advice on whether or not it's in an area that's going to be super high demand and there's potentially going to be competition and that type of thing. So my bottom line advice is be willing to make aggressive offers in properties that interest you. But if you find a property that interests you, make that offer. All right, so next, let's go ahead and talk about days on market. Obviously, the trend is not hard to spot here. Definitely just seeing sort of a regular increase since April of 2022, right up until March of 2023, where we saw a pretty substantial drop between February and March. But again, when you look at February of last year and March of last year, you see also a drop. Just because that's what happens, right? And when we get into the new year, typically February, March, April is when we start to see buyers coming out. We start to see homes starting to get sold. So that's typically a time when you start to see the days on market go down. We are now at 33 days, so still over a month just treating it as a landmark. Because as I said before, I think psychologically, sellers saying I've been on the market for a month and my home hasn't sold has just a deeper effect than simply saying 30 days. Now we peaked out in February at 53 days. At 33 days, we are 136% higher than we were last year. Last year, it was 14 days in March. And that was even that was a fake number back in March of last year, right up until March. As we started to see interest rates go up in March last year, we started to see a increase in the days on market as things had to readjust. Right? We suddenly saw a drop in buyers, and gradually the number of days to get homes sold increased until we hit July at 35, and then from there all the way up to February where we hit 53 days. We'll see how this number pans out. In April of last year, when compared to March, we saw a bit of a drop in the total number of days on market. My guess is we'll see a flat performance in days of market. It wouldn't surprise me if we see between 30 and 35 days as the days on market once we get into April of 2023. So I don't expect to see big drops in days on market. The interesting thing to note here, though, is in the selling season, we can often see things skewed toward lower days on market because homes get listed in that period as folks want to sell it. The ones that are best in market are going to sell quickly. So those ones that listed last sell first because they're the most desirable at that price point in that neighborhood. So it is something that we do tend to see. But what's interesting is the average days on market still increases because we still have homes that have been on the market for dozens days, 30 days, 60 days, that are still dragging along in the inventory that really haven't grokked the idea that they need to adjust their price point to really be properly calibrated with today's market. All right, let's go ahead and talk about price reductions. This is the total percentage of homes in the inventory in Morgan Hill that have had a price reduction. And I'm glad to see that this number's gone down a little bit, but given the numbers we talked about before, where homes are coming on the market at higher price points than what sales are supporting, and by enough that you're typically not going to see that big of a, what was it, like an 11 or 12% delta between expectations and reality. We're still going to see more homes needing to get that price dropped. And this is also one of those things that feeds increasing days on market. The longer folks wait without adjusting their price through a price reduction, the higher those days on market days are going to get. And I'm always strongly suggesting in all my market videos and all the videos that I do when this subject comes up, you as a seller, you as an agent, you need to have very frequent conversations about why the home hasn't sold yet. And those conversations should be starting at the 7 days, 2 weeks. I mean, don't wait for 30 days before you have this conversation, because you need to analyze it. If after 7 days you haven't gotten the level of attention or traffic that you would expect for your home, you need to have that conversation. So just make sure you're staying calibrated, because every day you delay is costing you money as a seller. So this month we had 23.1% of the homes in Morgan Hill inventory at a price reduction. Last month that was 31.8%. So there is a drop. Fewer homes on market are being dropped. And I think one reflection of that, this number was higher in previous months, is that a lot of the market has had price reductions in Morgan Hill. But we're continuing to add homes that are at higher levels. So I think this number may actually go up. I think it'll probably remain flat for the next couple of months as we're in the quote unquote hot season. But eventually folks are going to not make it out of the hot season with a sale, and they're going to have to adapt. And that's going to mean an uptick in the number of price reductions. All right. As always, the goal here is to leave you with more information on the table than I take up in your time. Absolutely hope we've achieved that today. Again, if you'd like to discuss your real estate goals, find out about the possibility of getting your home sold in today's market, getting a free instant market analysis, and access to one of the best tools relating to you owning a home, not even selling. Let's not even say you want to sell your home. Let's just say you want the best tools available to understand all your options with what to do with your equity, how much equity you have, all the things you'd want to know about your home as a homeowner. This tool has got it. And I just implemented it a week or two ago. You can access that at soldbyrobert.com right there on the front page on the left side. Just enter your address. You'll walk through a process. You'll update the information about your home if any of it that's available is incorrect. And from there on, you're going to be able to find out amazing things and open up tons of options that you may have never thought of for your home. So feel free to check that stuff out. And of course, I've got tools for buyers to start their journey there as well. So feel free to take advantage of that if you're shopping for that next perfect home. Thanks again for listening, everyone, and I'll talk to y'all next time.